I never thought installing solar panels would lead to a neighborhood war, but that's exactly what happened when I moved to Sunnyside Estates last spring. The first few weeks were peaceful, birds chirping, neighbors waving, and my energy bill dropping thanks to my brand new solar array. That is, until I met Karen Thompson, the self-appointed dictator of our HOA. It started with a letter in my mailbox. Dear homeowner, your recent installation does not comply with neighborhood aesthetic guidelines. Please remove within 7 days. No signature, just the Sunnyside Estates HOA letterhead. I was confused. I'd submitted all the proper paperwork before installation and received approval from the architectural committee. So naturally, I decided to attend the next HOA meeting to clear things up. That's where I first encountered Karen in all her glory. Picture a woman in her 50s with an aggressively layered bob haircut, designer sunglasses perched on her head indoors, and a clipboard she clutched like it contained nuclear launch codes. As HOA president, Karen ran the meeting like a military operation, cutting off residents mid-sentence and dismissing concerns with a wave of her French manicured nails. When my turn came to speak, her eyes narrowed to slits. Mr. Rivera, she said with a voice dripping with artificial sweetness, those solar panels simply won't do. They're an eyesore and diminish property values. The committee made a mistake approving them. When I produced my approval paperwork, her face flushed crimson. Well, I wasn't at that meeting, and as president, I have final say. They need to come down by next week, or you'll face daily fines. I stood my ground, explaining calmly that the panels were perfectly legal, environmentally responsible, and already approved through proper channels. Several neighbors nodded in agreement. Karen's knuckles turned white around her clipboard as she abruptly called for a bathroom break. When the meeting resumed, she mysteriously skipped over my agenda item and adjourned early. I went home thinking that was the end of it. I had my approval, after all. If only I'd known what Karen was capable of. 3 days later, I returned home from a business trip to find my solar panels in shambles. 2 were completely shattered, and the rest had been disconnected from the system. A note was taped to my front door. Now they definitely need to be removed. Management. Not HOA. Not Karen. Just management. As if this was some corporate decision rather than obvious vandalism. Fortunately for me, I'm not just an environmental enthusiast, I'm also a security consultant. When I bought the house, I installed a comprehensive security system with cameras covering every angle of my property. I immediately checked the footage and there she was, in all her entitled glory. Karen Thompson, at 3 in the afternoon, marching across my lawn with a stepladder and what appeared to be a garden rake. The footage clearly showed her climbing up and deliberately smashing 2 panels, then disconnecting the wiring on the others. All while wearing her tennis outfit, as if she'd just taken a quick break from her match to commit some casual destruction of property. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I called my insurance company, filed a police report, and contacted a lawyer friend. The damage was estimated at over $7,000, well into felony territory. The police seemed interested but wanted me to try resolving it through the HOA first. My lawyer advised differently. This is clear criminal damage to property. Press charges. I decided to try one more diplomatic approach before escalating. The next day, I printed several crystal-clear screenshots from my security footage and put them in an envelope. I knocked on Karen's door around dinner time. When she answered, her expression shifted from annoyed to horrified as I silently handed her the envelope. "What's this supposed to be?" she asked with a nervous tremor in her voice. "Just some paperwork regarding my solar panels," I replied evenly. "I thought you'd want to see it before our special HOA meeting tomorrow." I walked away as she tore open the envelope. The strangled gasp behind me was almost worth the $7,000 in damage. Almost. The next morning, I received a text message from an unknown number. "Please call me. We need to discuss restitution. Karen Thompson." I didn't respond. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way. At the emergency HOA meeting I'd requested, attendance was higher than usual. Rumors had spread, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Karen was uncharacteristically quiet, sitting in the corner rather than at the head of the table. The vice president conducted the meeting, looking uncomfortable as I presented my case. I showed the approval paperwork, photos of the damage, and finally, the piece de resistance. The security footage, which I projected on the wall for everyone to see. The room fell silent as we all watched Karen's methodical destruction of my property. When the lights came back on, all eyes turned to her. "It's not what it looks like," she said, her voice thin and reedy. "Those panels were installed incorrectly and posed a safety hazard. I was trying to prevent a fire." Several people exchanged glances. The vice president cleared his throat. "Karen, you're not a safety inspector or an electrician. And you didn't file any safety concerns with the board." What happened next surprised even me. One by one, neighbors began sharing their own Karen stories. The Patels weren't allowed to grow certain vegetables in their garden because they looked foreign. The Johnsons had been fined because their trash can remained at the curb for 2 hours after collection. Mrs. Abernathy, a widow in her 70s, had received daily notices about her bird feeder attracting undesirable wildlife. The floodgates had opened. While this was happening, I noticed Karen furiously texting under the table. Minutes later, a man in an expensive suit burst through the door, her husband, a local attorney I'd seen in billboard advertisements. "Nobody say another word," he commanded, trying to sound authoritative despite being out of breath. "This meeting is over." He grabbed Karen's arm and tried to usher her out, but they were stopped by an unexpected sight, 2 police officers standing in the doorway. "Karen Thompson?" one officer asked. She nodded stiffly. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of criminal damage to property." The officer continued speaking as he took out handcuffs, explaining her rights in a monotone voice that suggested he'd done this thousands of times. Karen's husband immediately shifted into lawyer mode, protesting that this was all a misunderstanding, but the security footage had left little room for interpretation. As the officers escorted Karen outside, her mascara streaming down her face, she turned to glare at me. "Do you know who I am in this community? This will never stand," she shouted with quivering indignation. Her husband hurried after them, already on his phone calling colleagues. Through the window, we could see Karen being placed in the police cruiser, her perfect bob wilting in the humidity. The vice president cleared his throat again. "I think we should vote on new HOA leadership, effective immediately." The motion passed unanimously. As a final twist of fate, Karen's phone, left behind in her hasty exit, buzzed with a notification. The vice president glanced at it and couldn't suppress a snort. "Well, looks like the country club board has also seen the footage. They've just revoked her membership." The room erupted in applause as Karen's police cruiser pulled away, taking with it years of petty tyranny and clipboard-wielding terror.